I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I really need some outside perspective. This is about my brother Mark, 37M, his wife Sarah, 34F, their daughter Emily, 14F, and the mess we're all in right now. For context, our family situation was different from most. Our parents died in a car accident when I, 35F, was 15 and Mark was 17. We went to live with our Uncle Tom, 55M now, who was our dad's younger brother. Growing up, Mark was always the charismatic one. He could make friends instantly and was super popular in school. I was more of an introvert who preferred books and studying. Despite our different personalities, we were close because we only had each other after losing our parents. Uncle Tom was amazing. He never made us feel like a burden and treated us both equally. He worked extra hours to make sure we could stay in our old school and keep some normalcy in our lives. I worked really hard in school and got a scholarship to study finance. After graduating, I landed a good job at an investment firm and worked my way up. Mark went into sales because he was great with people. He met Sarah in college, and they got married right after graduation. Emily was born a year later, and I instantly fell in love with being an aunt. I spent a lot of time with them, babysitting Emily when she was little and taking her on special trips as she got older. Life was good until about 5 years ago. Mark lost his sales job after his company downsized. He struggled to find another position that paid as well. That's when he started asking me for help. At first, it was small amounts, $500 here, $1,000 there. He always had detailed explanations. Emily needed a laptop for school, she had joined a competitive swimming team and needed equipment, there were medical bills from when she broke her arm. I never questioned him because the requests seemed reasonable, and I had a good salary. Plus, Emily would talk about her swimming competitions when I saw her, so it all added up. Sarah would thank me for helping with Emily's expenses, though looking back, I realized she was always vague about specifics. The requests got bigger over time. Mark would call late at night, sounding desperate, saying Emily needed emergency dental surgery or had been accepted into a prestigious academic program that required immediate payment. He promised to pay me back once he found a better job. Sometimes he'd send me photos of Emily at what he claimed were swim meets or academic competitions. I probably gave them around $50,000 over 3 years. I dipped into my savings and even took out a personal loan at one point because Mark made it sound like Emily would lose her spot on teams or in programs if payments weren't made immediately. I felt guilty saying no because Emily was my only niece, and I remembered how much it meant when Uncle Tom sacrificed for us. Everything fell apart last year when Sarah emailed me asking to meet privately. She looked terrible, exhausted and stressed. She broke down and told me the truth. Mark had a gambling addiction. He'd been lying about everything. There were no swimming competitions, no academic programs, no medical bills. The photos he sent were from old school events. He'd been using my money to gamble, convinced he could win big and pay everyone back. Sarah showed me bank statements and messages proving Mark's lies. She was filing for divorce and wanted me to know the truth before things got messy. When I confronted Mark, he tried gaslighting me at first, claiming Sarah was lying because she wanted to turn everyone against him. But when I showed him the evidence, he broke down and admitted everything. I was devastated. Not just because of the money, but because he'd used my love for Emily to manipulate me. I cut contact with him immediately. I told him never to ask me for money again and blocked his number. Sarah supported my decision and said she was doing the same once the divorce was final. That was 8 months ago. Last week, Sarah called me out of the blue. She said she got a great job offer in another state, but Emily doesn't want to leave her school and friends. She asked if Emily could live with me during the school year, saying it would only be until she graduates high school. I said no. Emily has been hostile towards me ever since I cut contact with Mark. She posts stuff on social media about how I abandoned them when they needed help most. Mark apparently told her that I refused to help pay for important medical treatments, making her believe her health issues went untreated because of me. She's called me selfish and heartless in family group chats. Sarah got upset when I refused. She said I was punishing Emily for Mark's actions and that Emily would understand once she knew the truth. But I've seen Emily's posts, she actively hates me. I can't take in a teenager who believes I'm some kind of monster, especially when she might be secretly communicating with Mark. Uncle Tom thinks I should reconsider. He reminded me how he took us in despite the challenges of raising 2 teenagers. He says Emily is just a kid who was manipulated by her father, just like I was manipulated by my brother. But I don't think it's the same situation. Taking in a hostile teenager who hates me seems like asking for trouble. I feel terrible for Emily. None of this is her fault, and she suffered enough because of Mark's actions. But I also need to protect my own mental health and living space. Sarah keeps calling, saying I'm her last hope for keeping Emily in her current school. Ida for refusing to take her in? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my original post. Thank you everyone for your comments and support. I wish I could say things got better, but they actually got much worse in ways I never expected. Last Thursday evening, I was working late from home when my doorbell rang around 8 p.m. I opened the door to find Emily standing there with a large suitcase and her school backpack. She looked tired and nervous, and my heart dropped when she said Sarah had just dropped her off and left. I was completely shocked because Sarah and I had no agreement about this. In fact, after my last post, I had texted Sarah clearly stating that I couldn't take Emily in. She responded saying she understood but hoped I would change my mind. We hadn't communicated since then. I tried calling Sarah immediately but it went straight to voicemail. I texted her multiple times but got no response. I felt trapped. I couldn't just send a 14-year-old away at night, but I also couldn't believe Sarah had pulled such a stunt. I called Uncle Tom, who said he'd come over right away to help figure things out. While waiting for Uncle Tom, I got Emily settled on the couch with some hot chocolate. She was quiet at first, but then she started crying. Not just regular crying, but deep, body-shaking sobs that made me realize something bigger was going on. I sat down next to her and asked what was really happening. Emily pulled out her phone and showed me weeks of messages between her and Mark. He had been telling her that if she could convince me to let her stay, he would move in too. He promised they could be a family again, saying things like once you're at Aunt's place, I'll come stay too and we can show her how good things could be. He told Emily that Sarah's new job was fake, it was just an excuse to take Emily away from him. The messages got worse. Mark had been feeding Emily all sorts of lies about Sarah. He claimed Sarah was secretly dating someone online and planned to abandon Emily with me so she could start a new life. He told Emily that Sarah had been stealing the child support he supposedly sent, he never sent any. He even convinced Emily that Sarah was planning to move to Europe, not just another state. Emily admitted she'd been helping Mark harass me online because he told her I was hoarding family money that could save their home. She showed me how Mark would tell her what to post on social media about me, promising that if she helped pressure me enough, I'd give them money to fix everything. Around this time, Uncle Tom arrived. While he talked with Emily in the living room, my phone started blowing up with messages from Mark. He must have known about Sarah dropping Emily off because he was sending rapid-fire texts about how this was our chance to heal the family. When I didn't respond, he started calling repeatedly from different numbers. Then things got really scary. Mark's gambling buddies started messaging me on every social media platform. Some messages were pleading, saying Mark was a good guy who deserved another chance. Others were threatening, saying I owed Mark money from childhood that I needed to repay by taking in Emily. A few even found my work email and LinkedIn. It took hours, but we finally got hold of Sarah around midnight. She broke down and admitted everything. There was no job offer in another state. She'd made it up because Mark had started showing up at their house again, and she was desperate to get Emily away from his influence. She thought if she could get Emily to stay with me for a while, she could figure out a more permanent solution. Sarah apologized for dropping Emily off without warning. She said she knew I'd probably send Emily back home if she asked first, but she couldn't handle seeing Mark manipulate Emily anymore. Apparently, he'd started taking Emily to meet his friends, the same people who were now harassing me online. Uncle Tom, being the amazing person he is, offered a solution. He said Sarah and Emily could stay with him until they figure out their next steps. He has plenty of space since his kids are grown, and he lives in the same school district. Sarah agreed immediately. The next morning, as we were helping Sarah and Emily get settled at Uncle Tom's house, we discovered something that made everything even more serious. Emily mentioned that Mark had helped her apply for a credit card for emergencies. Sarah checked Emily's credit report and found 3 credit cards had been opened in Emily's name over the past year. The most recent one was maxed out at $5,000. Sarah is devastated. She's working with the police now on identity theft charges. She also got a temporary restraining order against Mark to protect Emily. Emily is finally starting to see how her dad manipulated her, but she's understandably confused and hurt. I'm staying at Uncle Tom's for a few days to help them get settled. Emily apologized for the things she posted about me online, but I told her it wasn't her fault. She was manipulated by an adult she should have been able to trust. Mark is still trying to contact all of us through different numbers and accounts. His gambling friends have backed off since Sarah mentioned the police involvement. Uncle Tom thinks Mark might have borrowed money from dangerous people using Emily's credit cards. I'm worried about what he might do next, but at least Emily is safe now. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Right now we're focused on supporting Emily and helping Sarah deal with the identity theft situation. The hard part is knowing this is probably just the beginning of a very messy legal battle. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and we've uncovered so much more than we ever expected. The identity theft situation with Emily's credit cards led to a massive investigation that revealed Mark's schemes went far beyond what any of us imagined. The police financial crimes unit contacted me 2 weeks ago. They discovered Mark hadn't just stolen Emily's identity, he had opened accounts in my name too. Somehow, he had enough of my personal information to open 6 credit cards and take out 2 personal loans. I had no idea until the detective showed me the documentation. The total fraud in my name was over $70,000. When they dug deeper, they found Mark had also stolen Uncle Tom's identity. He had used Uncle Tom's information to co-sign for a car and take out a business loan. Uncle Tom only discovered this when the bank called about missed payments. The car was never found. Mark probably sold it immediately. Emily was with us when we learned about all this fraud. She had been staying at Uncle Tom's house and slowly coming to terms with everything. But finding out about the extent of her dad's crimes really broke her. She found an old phone she had stopped using last year and decided to go through it. What she found was heartbreaking. There were hundreds of messages between Mark and his gambling friends discussing how to use Emily's social media accounts to harass me. They had actually been logging into her accounts without her knowledge. The posts I thought Emily was making about me being heartless and greedy, those weren't even from her. Mark and his friends wrote those posts to make me feel guilty and manipulate me into giving them more money. Sarah told us Mark had always been controlling about Emily's phones and social media. He insisted on knowing all her passwords for safety reasons. Now we know he was using that access to manipulate everyone. Emily was horrified to learn how her dad had used her to hurt me. The day after we discovered all this, Emily asked to talk to me privately. She showed up at my apartment with tears in her eyes and a handwritten letter. She apologized for everything, not just the social media posts she actually made, but for believing her dad's lies about me. She said she remembered all the good times we had when she was younger and wanted to know if we could try to rebuild our relationship. I agreed to start slow. We're doing lunch dates every other weekend now. Last time, she brought old photos from when she was little, and we talked about happy memories from before Mark's gambling took over. It was nice to see glimpses of my sweet niece again. Meanwhile, Mark has vanished. The police tried to bring him in for questioning, but he cleared out his apartment and disappeared. His gambling buddies aren't being loyal anymore. Several of them came forward to the police after discovering he had stolen from them too. We learned Mark owes money to some dangerous people in underground gambling circles. Sarah found text messages on Emily's old phone showing Mark had borrowed $20,000 from someone named Big Mike, using Emily's credit cards as collateral. When Sarah told the police about this, they said Big Mike was a known loan shark they'd been trying to catch. The FBI is now involved because Mark's identity theft crossed state lines. Uncle Tom has been amazing through all of this. He helped Sarah and Emily get set up in a small apartment near his house. Emily is still in her same school, and Sarah found a part-time job at a local dental office. They're struggling financially because of all the legal fees, but at least they're safe. The hardest part in all of this is seeing Emily process the truth about her father. She swings between anger at his betrayal and worry about where he is and if he's safe. The police think he might have fled the state, possibly heading west where some of his gambling contacts have connections. I'm working with a fraud investigator to clean up my credit. The banks are removing the fraudulent accounts, but it's a slow process. Uncle Tom is dealing with the same thing. The detective said we should get some restitution if they catch Mark, but no one seems very optimistic about that. Right now, we're all just trying to rebuild. Emily started making new social media accounts that only she controls. Sarah is looking for a better job. And I'm learning to trust my instincts more. That nagging feeling I had about Mark's stories all those years ago was right. Update 3, 2 months have passed since my last update. The biggest news is that Mark finally got caught. He was arrested last week trying to cross the Canadian border with fake ID documents. A Border Patrol agent recognized him from the fraud alert bulletins. The police called Sarah first since she's still legally his wife. She told me and Uncle Tom immediately. Emily was at school when we got the news, and we all agreed Sarah should tell her privately when she got home. Emily's reaction was complicated. She cried but said she felt relieved knowing he couldn't show up unexpectedly anymore. The prosecutor met with us yesterday. They found evidence that Mark was part of a larger identity theft ring operating through gambling circles. They offered him a deal, less prison time if he helps identify other people involved, especially Big Mike. Mark took the deal pretty quickly, which didn't surprise any of us. Through his lawyer, Mark tried to contact me several times. He sent messages about needing money for legal fees and claiming he could explain everything. I blocked the jail's phone number after the third call. Some cousins found out about his arrest and started messaging me saying I should help him one last time because he's family. I blocked them too. Emily and I have been making progress in rebuilding our relationship. We've had lunch together every other weekend for the past 2 months. Last week, she asked if she could start coming over to my apartment sometimes after school when Sarah works late. I agreed as long as she keeps her grades up. Sarah found a full-time position at the dental office where she was working part-time. The pay is better and includes benefits. Their apartment lease is up next month, but Uncle Tom told them they can stay with him longer if they need to. He's been teaching Emily to garden, which seems to help her cope with everything. The police recovered some money from Mark's fraud schemes. They found a storage unit in Nevada with cash and expensive items he'd bought with stolen credit cards. The detective said once everything is processed, victims should get partial restitution. They also found notebooks with details about all his scams. He kept careful records of every identity he stole and every account he opened. Yesterday, Mark's lawyer contacted us again with a message from Mark. He wanted Emily to visit him in jail. Sarah left the decision up to Emily, who thought about it overnight and decided she's not ready to see him. Her school counselor said that's perfectly normal and she shouldn't feel pressured. I've decided to stay completely away from Mark. Some extended family members think I'm being harsh, saying he needs support now more than ever. But Uncle Tom put it best. He said Mark had countless chances to make better choices, and supporting him now would just enable more bad behavior. Emily understands my decision. She told me she still loves her dad but knows she can't trust him. She's working with her school counselor to process everything. Sarah is helping her open her first legitimate bank account, teaching her about financial responsibility, the opposite of what Mark modeled. We're all slowly moving forward. The prosecutor says Mark will probably serve at least 5 years. That gives us time to heal and rebuild without worrying about his interference. Emily is talking about maybe spending some school breaks with me now, which shows how far we've come from where we started. For now, we're focusing on the good things: Emily's improving grades, Sarah's new job, Uncle Tom's garden, and the quiet peace of knowing Mark can't manipulate any of us anymore.